Good morning and good day to everyone. Hello from New York and welcome to this pension presentation on separation and pre-retirement. I see that we already have over 900 attendees, so thank you all for being here from wherever you are joining. And again, good day, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. We're here today with the group of client services from the UN Pension Fund, and our goal is to hopefully help you understand and get more clarity on your entitlements from the fund in the future, and of course, the process leading to separation, what is required from you, what documentation, what are the timelines that you should expect for implementation of a benefit, etc. So the session is announced for 3 hours. We will try to keep it a little shorter. We'll do our best, but we do have a lot to cover. So hopefully you will walk away from this session feeling equipped for a possible separation in the future. I would like to welcome and thank my colleagues from the client services teams in New York and Geneva, possibly also Nairobi and Bangkok, where we are represented in the world, and we are here together to address your questions today and of course present to you the information I mentioned. In terms of housekeeping, we will allow for question and answers in the chat, but not straight from the beginning for a very good reason, because we have seen over the time that we have held these pension sessions that it is actually not bad to keep the chat closed for a while so that you can actually listen and concentrate on what we are saying. The chat can get a bit distracting. So we keep it closed for the first part and we'll open it after the break, which will be in about an hour and maybe a half, we'll see. So after the break, we will open the chat so you can put your questions in the chat. In that regard, please note that the chat is visible publicly. So please do not put personal details into the chat, since it would be visible to everyone who is looking at that chat. And of course, that we do not want. So when you ask questions, please make sure to keep them general and do not include your personal pension fund number or references that could identify you, because of course we want to keep your details private. My screen just went dark, but it is back. So sorry, I was a little bit disconcerted. In addition to that, we have a large number of attendees already. Now we are at close to 1,500 attendees. We are a relatively small team in client services. We'll have around 6 to 8 people answering questions. So please bear with us. If you ask questions, and we get a lot of questions usually, it may take a moment for them to answer, because obviously it takes a moment to provide the information that is needed. So we will try and do our very best to answer every single question that is coming in, but you may have a little time lapse between submitting it and getting your answer. We also know that the question is always asked, will this session be available later? Can I watch it somewhere else? Can I get the presentation? The answer is absolutely yes. On our website, we have a web page dedicated to these pension briefings and town hall sessions, where we publish within a couple of days after the actual session, the recording and the presentation that was given. So yes, you will absolutely have access to both these items, and they will be published, I would say latest by the end of the week, but probably before, so that you could go there and watch the recording or the pieces of the recording that are relevant or you're interested in, and of course, download the presentation. I will share later where exactly you can find that information. We will have a whole section of this presentation dedicated to explaining to you where you can find useful information, pension tools, including these town hall session recordings. Some other housekeeping in terms of timing, I think I mentioned it, but I will repeat that we do intend to have a break I think you need a break from pension information at some point. So as I mentioned, it will be roughly within an hour and 15 to 20 minutes from now. What will we cover and what do we hope you take away from this session today? We will talk about your future entitlements from the fund, your benefit options, so that you understand what your options may be, depending on your length of contributory service in the fund, and if you are entitled to a form of retirement benefit, depending also on your age at the time of separation. We will cover the details of what these different benefits entail and how they are calculated at a high level, but so you have an idea. We will explain to you how to find relevant information about your specific case, your pension statement for pension purposes, but also where you can run estimates and how to read estimates so that you can make an informed decision for your future entitlement from the pension fund. Then we will talk about other benefits that the fund provides, including survivors benefits. We know that a lot of people have questions about survivors benefits. And of course, this is an important part of what the fund provides. And we will give you an overview of the different kinds of survivors benefits that the fund may pay. And then we have a whole section dedicated to the separation and what is required from you to prepare for separation. So we will go over that, explain to you the process, who needs to submit what do you have to submit, what does your employing organization has to submit to the pension fund, and how then will the process evolve in the fund? What is the expectation of implementing your benefit, within what timeline? What could delay processing and how can you avoid that? So we will discuss all of that. And then we will close the session with practical information, in the sense we will give you an overview of pension tools that you can use. Your member self-service for pension is very important. That is where you can run estimates. That is where you will access official pension forms. And the member self-service for pension is also where you can submit documents to the fund. And of course, where you can access an important document called your pension statement. We will talk about that later. So we will talk about those tools, plus about the website and where you can find helpful information. We spend a lot of time trying to make the website more and more useful, more and more user-friendly, and address the questions that we receive regularly from our members and make sure that you have the information you need to prepare for separation, retirement, and just in general answer your pension questions. So that is what we will cover today, and we hope that this session will address those questions. Before we go in, we ask a question from you, and thank you for answering it. I will share my presentation so that you can see what question we would like you to answer. Please also look at the chat where there is a link, and if you click on the link, you will see the question. Hold on, sorry, I'm sharing my presentation at this point. And the question is, how or what would you expect from this session, and what would make it successful, meaning that you walk away saying this was useful and worth my time. So I see that questions are already coming in, which is excellent. Thank you very much for participating in this question. It will help us also know what you expect from these pension sessions. So thank you. All right, so I'm sharing, one moment. We're still sharing the icebreaker, so let me just have a look at that before I go into the pension presentation. So I see here clarity is very much in the center of the page, and of course I hope that this session will give you clarity and that we explain things in a manner that is helpful and clear to you. You want orientation, knowledge, understanding the separation process and its requirements, the timeline for separation. Where will I retrieve my contributions after separation? Practical information. Very well. So I hope and I think we have tailored this presentation very much to what you expect from it. Thank you for participating. So let's go in and start explaining the world of pension. Okay, now I will share. For some reason, I don't seem to get the red box around my presentation. Let's see. Interesting. Dilba, do you mind pulling up the presentation? There seems to be an issue. Thank you. Great. All right. So going in. Let me just pull this over. I think the issue is on my, very sorry, is on my laptop because it went dark. Okay, let's try one more time. Okay, it works. Dilba, I can take over. Thank you very much. All right, here we are. Sorry for that. Let's go in. So I already explained what we will cover today. So just a reminder, a quick overview of the fund, how it works, and also addressing the question about the fund's financial situation in times of turmoil as we are currently experiencing in the world. And then some key pension definitions and factors, followed by explanation of your future entitlements, the different kinds of pension benefits the fund provides, an overview of survivors' benefits, and then the specifics on separation from service, the process, requirements, and how to prepare. And then finally, a demo of pension tools where we will go into member self-service and on our website, showing you in real time where to find useful information. So before we go into the benefits, let's quickly just address some questions about the pension fund and giving you a very high-level overview of how the fund works, who we are, what we do. If you want more information, on our website, we have several videos explaining the fund, explaining pension entitlements, etc. There are over 20 videos. They are about 2-3 minutes long. This is one of them that you see here that is linked in the presentation. So if you're interested to receive more details or a different kind of presentation, then please go to this video and watch it. We will also address that in the presentation now. But just so you know, we have a wealth of videos, and I think they are very well done to explain pension and sometimes complex pension topics in a manner that is understandable. Now, who are we in the fund? We have 24 member organizations. I expect that out of the over 2,000 attendees today, probably you're representing all of these 24 member organizations, or at least most of them. These organizations include our participants, and all of you, regardless of which of our member organization you work for, you're subject to the same pension regulations and rules, and you're participating in the fund under the exact same conditions as your colleague in another organization. So whether you work for the UN in New York or for WFP in Yemen or for UNDP in Senegal, it doesn't matter. You are, if you are a member in the UN Pension Fund, subject to the exact same conditions of pension fund participation and future entitlements as your colleagues in the other organizations. We have over 149,000 participants in the fund, meaning people like you and I who are staff members of one of these 24 member organizations of the fund and who pay pension contributions to the fund. So we are a total of over 149,000, probably by now over 150,000. These numbers that you see here are from our latest verified accounts and year-end verifications. So over, let's say, or close to 150,000 members in the fund who are currently contributing to the fund and are members expecting a payout from the fund, either in the form of a one-time payout or in the form of a lifelong retirement benefit. And the fund is currently paying over 86,000 benefits. What are benefits? Benefits are payments from the fund that could include a disability benefit, a form of retirement benefit, or a survivor's benefit. So benefits, periodic benefits, are benefits payable in monthly intervals. We also pay one-time payouts called withdrawal settlements to many of our members when they separate. But here we are talking about those that are on the regular pension fund payroll, receiving a form of regular monthly payment from the fund. So again, over 86,000 members of the fund are currently receiving a form of payout from the fund. In terms of value, you see values under each of these numbers, and I think this is interesting because it tells you the story of how are we funded. At least it tells you that story partially. So we are receiving income from all of us who are participating in the fund. We are paying contributions to the fund, and our employing organization pays contribution on our behalf to the fund to fund the pension system. In 2023, the fund received over $3.4 billion income in pension contributions from those who had to pay contributions. Again, us, the staff members who are participants in the fund, and our employing organizations. On the other hand, we had to pay out money to over 86,000 members of the fund who are entitled to benefits. And the fund paid out just over $3.52 billion in the same year. So what you see here is that the contributions received from us participants in the fund and our employing organizations was nearly sufficient to cover the payouts that the fund had to make in the same year. And I think this is very good to understand that actually most of what we have to pay out is covered by what we are receiving as income. But there is a gap. Now, that gap between what we are receiving as income and what we have to pay out to our beneficiaries, how do we cover that? And that is covered from the market value of assets of the UN Pension Fund. Our assets are, of course, invested in the market, and at the latest, on the 11th of April, the value, that is the latest published figure, the value of the assets of the fund was at just over $93.4 billion. That is the money we draw from to close the gap between 3.4 and 3.52. So the market value of these assets and the assets of the fund are our buffer, our pillow on which we rest, easy to make sure that we can pay all of the benefits that we are currently owing, but also future entitlements. So this is the value that changes, the market value of assets that changes nearly on a daily basis, because of course it is invested in the markets. It will fluctuate. It will go up and down over time. That is absolutely normal. The value is very high, and the fund is very well funded. We have what we call a funded ratio of 111% at this point, which is found or which is determined by actuarial studies. And that means that the fund is exceeding 100% of what it needs to pay benefits not only today, but into the long term within the next 30, 40 years. Why am I telling you all this? Because, of course, a lot of people have questions about how secure is my pension fund? And the answer to that is it's actually very well funded, and it's solvent, and it's stable. Now, before I go to the other point, let's look at that a little bit more. So because we are receiving questions about this, we wanted to assure you that you are part of a well-funded system. I am part of a well-funded system. So the benefits are secure. The fund is financially solid. We have a constant oversight and actuarial valuations, asset liability studies taking place on a regular basis to make sure that the design of the UN pension fund is adequate, that we can pay benefits at the value and the rate that we owe them today, tomorrow, and in the future to everyone who is today a member in the fund and expecting payouts in the future. Maybe in a year, maybe in 10 years, maybe in 30 years. Okay. We get questions. What if participant numbers decline drastically? Will that not impact the fund's solvency? The answer is no. Actually, the fund solvency is at this point so stable that we would absolutely be able to cover the payouts that we owe, even if we had a decline in participant numbers rather than a steady or upward trend of participant numbers. So again, the fund is safe. Also, what is the fund in terms of pension scheme? We are what we call a defined benefit plan. That means that the value of our pension is not dependent on how the assets perform, but it is based on a formula that takes into account the length of our contributory service in the fund, meaning how many years we contributed to the fund. And if I'm entitled to a form of retirement benefit, it also takes into account my age at the time of separation. And when we calculate future entitlements, we look at length of contributory service and at age to determine what kind of retirement benefit someone may be entitled to. And we look at the income level of the separating staff to determine their future entitlements. So the formula to calculate retirement benefits, which are payable for life and which are adjusted for cost of living over time, is based on a formula taking into account these factors: the length of your contributory service, your age at the time of separation to determine what kind of retirement benefit you may be entitled to, and your income level at the end of your career to determine your final average remuneration level, which is part of the calculation of your entitlement. Once, based on that formula, we have calculated your base entitlement amount, which will then be adjusted for cost of living over time, we will pay you that amount for life. It will not change. It will not stop after a while. It will continue to be paid at the level that you are entitled based on this formula, which is set in our regulations and rules. And that is the beauty of a defined benefit plan, that we have entitlements that are for life and adjusted for cost of living over time. Again, if you have questions about fund solvency, remember this balance, the actual balance that is the balance of the UN pension fund, where contributions and benefit payouts are constantly monitored, the investment returns and the operating expenses, which are a tiny part of the overall expenses of the pension fund, are constantly monitored to ensure it is in balance. Those actuarial studies monitor that balance to ensure that the fund and the fund's plan design, as we say, is adequate for payment of entitlements in line with our regulations and rules into the long-term future. And again, we are talking 30, 40, 50 years into the future. Last point on this: if you have concerns, because currently, of course, there is financial uncertainty in the world. Look at this graph, and I know there are a lot of numbers, but why I'm showing you this is to show you that over time, this shows you the last 40-ish years of pension fund life. And the actual valuations that were done, that are done, by the way, every other year. And you can see there were years in the 80s where there were significant deficits in our actual valuations. And then there were years in the 90s and earlier 2000s where we had surplus, actual surplus. And then, of course, we all remember 2008-9, big financial crisis. The fund had major losses in its assets value. And there's again the light blue lines of deficits, followed by an increase. So over time, you see these turmoil periods are part of financial markets and are part of the life of a defined benefit plan pension fund. This monitoring ensures that if there is an excess or like a surplus or a deficit exceeding 2%, at that point, the actuarial committee and the fund's actuaries will start looking into whether adjustments have to be made into the plan design, which could be about adjusting normal retirement age, early retirement age, early retirement reduction factors. There are measures that can be taken to adjust the plan design to ensure long-term solvency of the fund, of course. But currently, there is no such need because the fund in its most recent actual study was actually in a surplus. And therefore, there is no need to make any adjustment to our plan design. And for sure, the benefits that are in payment will not be changed. Their amounts are stable and based on that formula I mentioned earlier. If you have questions about this and you want much more details, here are links to our website. On the actual matters page of the website, you can actually get much more detailed information about how the fund solvency is monitored and addressed. And then we recently, a few days ago, had a town hall given by the Chief Executive of Pension Administration and the representative of the Secretary General for Investments of the Pension Fund, where they provided an update on the status of the UN Pension Fund. If you attended that town hall, you're aware, but if you didn't, I would say here's a link. Maybe you want to watch it. It's a 45 minutes town hall where they address in a bit more detail all of these questions about fund solvency and financial status. I hope this will help reassure you to know that you're part of a healthy pension fund. I will now hand over to my colleague Dilba to take over for the next part. But before that, I would just remind you there is very good information on our website about all of this, including about the investments of the fund, the current investment and asset value of the fund, etc. I will show you this later when we go into the pension tools, but use the website. It's really a very informative, I think, tool for you to understand what the fund is all about. Dilba, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. I will start sharing my screen, and if there is any issue, please let me know. So for those who don't know me, my name is Dilbar Muradova, and I work with Christine in the fund's client services of the New York office. And before I go into the types of benefits that the fund offers, we will look into some of the key pension concepts that are important to understand that in turn determine the types of benefits that one might be entitled to. So when determining the benefit options that may be available to you, the first step is to look at how long you contributed to the fund before separating from service. If you had less than 5 years of contributory service at the time of your separation, your only available option is the withdrawal settlement. that is a one-time payment that settles your relationship with the fund. And once we make that payment to you, no further benefit will be payable to you or your survivors. However, if you had at least 5 years of contributory service when you separate from service, then you will have earned the right to a lifelong periodic benefit, meaning you have now vested pension rights. In that case, we also look at your age at the time of separation. That will play a role in determining which benefit options are available to you. Another important term to understand is the normal retirement age. It is the age that is determined under the pension fund regulations and rules as the age at which, if you have vested pension rights and you separate at or after reaching your normal retirement age, you are entitled to a normal retirement benefit, meaning a benefit to which no reduction factor is applied. But if you were to separate before reaching your normal retirement age and we start paying you a periodic benefit, the fund will have to apply a so-called early retirement reduction factor. We would have to reduce your entitlement by a certain percentage rate for life to compensate for the fact that you start receiving your benefit before having reached your normal retirement age. All of this will be explained in detail shortly. Your normal retirement age is determined based on the date when you first became a participant in the pension fund. And there are currently 3 normal retirement ages for pension purposes. For example, if you are someone who joined the fund's participation after 1 January 2014, your normal retirement age is 65. And finally, we currently have 2 early retirement ages, 55 for participants who joined the fund before 2014, and 58 for those who joined in 2014 or later. What it means is that anyone who separates from service between their early retirement age and their normal retirement age and has vested pension rights, so meaning they've contributed to the fund for at least 5 years, they can choose to begin receiving payments under the early retirement option, if this is what they decide to do. Now, the mandatory age of separation is the age that is set under the regulations and rules of the staff regulations and rules of your employing organization, not the pension fund. And it is the date at which you must separate from service and you can no longer work. It's important to understand that the fund has nothing to say about up to what age you are allowed to work, so that mandatory age of separation is determined by your employing organization alone. For example, in my case, my mandatory age of separation is 65, which means that I can continue working until that age. However, for pension purposes, my normal retirement age is 62 because I joined the fund's participation in 2011, and under the pension rules and regulations in place at that time, the normal retirement age was 62. What it means is that I could choose to separate from service at age 62 or any time after and still be entitled to receive a normal retirement benefit. And all of this information that I've just discussed is included in your annual pension statement. Your annual pension statement is published every year, and it is available inside your member self-service account under the Documents tab. This document will give you an overview of your status with the pension fund since you joined, till the year end prior to the year when we published it. So for example, the most recent one that we published was in May 2024, and it gives you an overview of your participation since you joined the fund till the year end of 2023. Your 2024 pension statement will be available early next month, so it's in the first week of May, and you can access it inside your member self-service portal. I encourage all of you to look at your latest pension statement and make sure that the data that we have on file for you, as it was reported by your employing organization, is actually correct. Check under the personal data, check the spelling of your name, your date of birth, your marital status, and under contributor service, date of your entry into participation, to make sure that all of this is correct. And if you see any discrepancy, please contact your HR focal point as soon as possible so that correction is made before you separate from service. You could also see on the top right corner your normal retirement age. You could verify it against the date of entry under section B. Please be aware that your beginning contributory service date might be different from your date of entry if you availed yourself of options such as validation, restoration, or transfer in. But it is your date of entry that determines your early and your normal retirement ages, not the beginning of your contributory service date. And also under section B, you will see the total contributory service you acquired since you joined the fund. So you could see whether you have vested pension rights or not. And on the right, you see your leave without pay or break in service, if there were any during your participation in the fund. If you have ever seen any break in service or leave without pay reflected in your statement that you never took, please again contact your HR focal point as soon as possible and report this discrepancy. For more information on everything that I've just covered, please visit our dedicated webpage on participation. I'm sharing the links here. You will find a wealth of resources and detailed guidelines on the topic on our website. All right, so let's start with an overview of the main pension benefits. Just a reminder that your pension benefit will be determined based on your separation date. We will first have to check whether or not you have acquired pension rights. The fund offers two types of benefits: settlement payments, which are one-time payments that end your relationship with the fund, meaning after we paid you this benefit, no further payment will be made to you or your survivors. Or, I mean, it could be in the form of a withdrawal settlement or a residual settlement. And the second type of benefit is a periodic benefit, which may be paid for life in case of a retirement benefit, or for a specific period of time, like in the case of a child benefit. And all of this will be discussed in details shortly. So again, the benefit options available to you at the time of separation will depend on the length of your contributory service and whether or not you have vested pension rights, meaning you've contributed to the fund for at least 5 years. If you do have vested pension rights, and you are eligible for a retirement benefit, meaning a periodic benefit payable for life, the type of that benefit that you can choose will depend on your age at the time of your separation. Now you may be wondering how these benefits are calculated. So for a withdrawal settlement, the amount is determined by the total of your own contribution to the fund, together with the interest earned from the time you joined up until the end of your service. And if you have more than 5 years of contributory service and opt to receive a withdrawal settlement, you are entitled for an additional 10% of your contribution interest for each year beyond those initial 5 years. And that increase can be a maximum of 100%. We'll look at some examples of how withdrawal settlement is calculated shortly. For periodic benefit, the calculation follows a specific formula. This formula takes into account several key elements, such as the length of your contributory service, which impacts your rate of accumulation. We also look at your final average income level, and again, your age when you separate from service. And this formula is applied to all periodic benefits. To better understand your benefit options, let's look at several scenarios. So for those under scenario 0, meaning those who have less than 5 years of contributory service, they have only one benefit option, and that is a withdrawal settlement. And it is regardless of their age at the time of separation. They will also have an option to delay payment of their withdrawal settlement for up to 36 months. So this scenario is for those who have less than 5 years of contributory service at the time of separation. However, if for those who have vested pension rights, we can break it down by different normal retirement age scenarios. And let's look at scenario number 2, which is the most common these days, where the normal retirement age is 62 for participants who join the fund's participation prior to 1 January 2014, but after 1 January 1990. So if you have vested pension rights and you separate before reaching your normal retirement age 55, your benefit options would be a withdrawal settlement or a deferred retirement benefit. If you separate between the ages 55 and 62, that is between your early and normal retirement age, you would have more options: a withdrawal settlement, a deferred retirement benefit, and an early retirement benefit. Deferred retirement and early retirement benefit come with different conditions and entitlements. So it's very important that you understand the difference between them before you make that choice. And finally, if you were to separate at a normal age of 62 or later, you will be eligible for a normal retirement benefit only. And taking a withdrawal settlement is no longer an option. And I will go over this benefit again in detail shortly. Now, anyone who separates from service has an option to defer making a benefit election. That is, they can choose to postpone their decision about the type of benefit they wish to receive for up to 36 months after separation. And this choice is available to all participants. Just to clarify, this option is different from the deferred retirement benefits. The main benefit of this deferral option is that it lets you delay your decision if you plan to rejoin the pension fund by joining another member organization soon after separating from service. You can essentially freeze your pension rights for up to 36 months after you separate. If you rejoin the fund and by being reemployed by a member organization of the pension fund within the 36 months period, and no benefit payment have been made to you, you will then resume your participation and continue building on your existing pension rights and contributory service. That means that when you eventually separate again, your benefit could be higher, reflecting additional contributory service and contribution. However, you must make a final decision about your benefits within 36 months. And if you don't, the fund then will have to make that choice for you, and you may lose some options. Now, let's look at the benefits that are offered by the pension fund in more details. To start with, there is a video on the fund's website called What Are Your Benefit Options? This video explains different benefits that you may be eligible to elect as a participant of the pension fund when you separate from service. We will not watch it today, but I strongly recommend that you take time to watch it. Oops. We also have a comparative pension benefit chart available on our website that allows you to explore benefit options based on your length of contributory service and age. And there's also another chart that breaks down each benefit in detail and also addresses the most frequently asked question about each benefit. So I highly recommend that you take advantage of these resources that are available on our website. Let's begin with the withdrawal settlement, which is a one-time payment that settles your relationship with the fund. This means that once the settlement is paid, no further payment will be made to you or your survivors. The withdrawal settlement is calculated based on your own contribution to the fund, plus the compound interest earned on those contributions up to your separation date. One important factor to understand is that it does not include your employer share. What it means is that a withdrawal settlement will be a reimbursement of your contribution plus the 3.25% compound interest earned on this contribution up to your date of separation. It's very important for you to know that you won't be accumulating interest on your contribution after you have separated from service, and it does not include the organizational share. If you have more than 5 years of contributory service when you separate, meaning you have vested pension rights, and you choose to receive a withdrawal settlement, you will get an additional 10% in increase based on how many years you've contributed to the fund beyond the first 5 years. And we will see this shortly, that if you have up to 5 years of contributory service, you'll receive your contribution plus interest. And if you have more than 5 years, you will receive an extra amount depending on how many years you've contributed beyond those 5 years. The maximum increase you can receive is 100% of your contribution and interest, which means that you cannot get more than double the amount you contributed and interest you've earned on these contributions. And this maximum can be reached at 15 years of contributory service. And final point is, if you are paid a withdrawal settlement and later return to the fund by rejoining a member organization, you can then repay this withdrawal settlement and restore the contributory service period it covered, essentially then adding this prior period to your new contributory service. And please be aware that there are strict deadlines that apply to this restoration option. All right, so let's look at some examples. What if you separate from service with 4 years of contributory service? Your withdrawal settlement will include your own contribution plus the interest, the compound interest earned on this contribution. For instance, if you contributed 20,000 to the fund and earned 5,000 in interest, your withdrawal settlement would be 25,000. Since your contributory service is less than 5 years, there would be no additional increase to this amount. Now let's consider a scenario where you separate from service after 7.5 years of contributory service and choose a withdrawal settlement. In this case, you will receive not only your contribution and interest earned on them, but also an additional 25% of your contribution and interest. This increase is because you have 2.5 years more than the initial 5 years, and each of these extra years add 10% to your original contribution and interest amount. If you have 15 years of contributory service at the time of your separation and choose a withdrawal settlement, you will receive double your original contribution and interest. This means you get your contribution and interest earned plus an additional 100% of your contribution and interest. The 100% increase is because you have 10 years more than the initial 5 years of service, with each of this extra year adding 10% to your withdrawal settlement. Finally, let's say you leave service after 20 years of contributory service and choose a withdrawal settlement. In this case, you will receive your own contribution plus the interest earned on them together with an increase. But this increase can't be more than 100% because this is the cap. So in this scenario, your withdrawal settlement would be double your contribution and interest. So this is how we calculate a withdrawal settlement. Now let's look at the retirement benefits. These are benefits that are paid for life and adjusted to the cost of living, so meaning they increase over time. There are several types of retirement benefits available, and the options you can choose from, if you have vested pension right, will depend on your age at the time of separation. And the pension benefit will be based on a formula that considers key factors, such as the length of your contributory service, which determines your rate of accumulation, multiplied by your final average remuneration or income level. And this is the formula, again, that is applied to all periodic benefits. Let's begin with the most desired retirement benefit option, that is the normal retirement benefit. This is the benefit paid if you separate from service with vested pension rights at or after reaching your normal retirement age. So for example, if a participant if the participant's normal retirement age is 62 and they have vested pension rights, they would be entitled to a normal retirement benefit if they separate at age 62 or after. This benefit is a periodic benefit that is payable for life, and it includes an option to convert part of this benefit into a lump sum, a one-time payment. Meaning the normal retirement benefit offers the choice to take a portion of your entitlement as a one-time lump sum payment when the benefit is implemented, with the remaining amount paid out in the monthly installments for life and adjusted to the cost of living over time. There is no reduction factor applied to the normal retirement benefit. And to qualify for this benefit, again, you must have vested pension rights, meaning at least 5 years of contributory service at the time of your separation, and you must have reached your normal retirement age for pension purposes, which is again determined by the date when you entered into the fund's participation. This benefit carries both potential surviving spouse benefit and child's benefit. If you have children under the age of 21 who were officially declared to your organization and to the pension fund at the time of your separation, the fund will also provide a child allowance for each eligible child until they reach the age of 21. And if you have a child with a disability, you can apply for a disabled child allowance, which will continue to pay beyond the age 21 for a child that is recognized as disabled. And finally, if you are your entitlement to this benefit begins the date after your separation date. Once your benefit is implemented, the fund will pay you retroactively from that date. You should know that there is a process that takes place after you separate from service, like gathering the necessary documents from you and your employing organization, performing calculation, auditing before the fund can actually implement your benefit. And that takes some time. However, once everything is in order and your benefit is implemented, we will pay your benefit retroactively from the date after your date of separation. The lump sum option is available with both early and normal retirement benefits. This means that you can choose to receive a one-time payment at the start of your retirement. This is entirely optional. It's up to you whether or not you want to take a lump sum. And the lump sum amount can be up to a greater of 1/3 of the present value of your full annual benefit or the total of your contribution plus the interest you've earned on this contribution. Keep in mind, however, that if you choose to take a lump sum, your monthly retirement payments for life will be proportionately reduced. So there is an impact on the amount that you will receive on a monthly basis. So while you don't have to take the lump sum, it's important to understand that the impact it will have on your monthly benefit before you make that decision. Before you separate from service, we advise that you use the estimate tool in your member self-service portal to get an estimate of your entitlements. And this will help you decide if you want to take a lump sum or not. And the estimate tool lets you try out different lump sum options so you can see how different amount impact your yearly pension. So for example, in this estimate, the person separated at their normal retirement age, and therefore they are entitled to a normal retirement benefit with or without lump sum. If they don't take a lump sum, they'll get over $95,000 per year. But if they take the lump sum, the maximum lump sum, and in this case, it's around $550,000, their yearly pension drops to $53,000. So you see that taking a lump sum has an impact on the yearly pension. The amounts here are shown annually. However, please note that the fund pays monthly, so you would get 1/12 of the annual amount each month to the bank account that you instruct us to pay it to. And when using the estimate tool, we recommend that you start with the default lump sum amount, which shows the maximum lump sum available. To know your maximum lump sum, when running your estimate, please leave the lump sum option box blank. You can then rerun your estimate with the lower lump sum amount to see how it impacts your monthly pension if you want to receive a higher amount on an annual basis. And finally, if we have your spouse detail on file, the estimate will also show you what the surviving spouse's benefit would be should you predecease them. The eligible surviving spouse will always get 50% of the full pension amount, and in this case, it's about $48,000 per year, regardless of whether this participant takes the lump sum or not. It means that the surviving spouse's benefit is always based on the full pension. So taking a lump sum will not have an impact on your spouse, on what your spouse would receive should they survive you. So let's now look at another benefit option, the early retirement benefit. Like the normal retirement benefit, this is a periodic benefit paid in monthly installment for life. It also includes the option to take a lump sum. However, since you are retiring before reaching your normal retirement age, a reduction factor will apply to your benefits. And I will go over these reduction factors in the next slide. Again, the early retirement benefit is a lifelong benefit, like the normal retirement benefit. It's calculated the same way, but a reduction factor is applied to account for the fact that you're starting to receive your pension earlier than your normal retirement age. Similar to the normal retirement benefit, the early retirement benefit also offers the option of a lump sum. Once payments begin, your monthly benefit will be adjusted to the cost of living over time. In addition, if you are eligible for a child allowance under the you are entitled to a child allowance under the early retirement benefit, but it will only begin once you reach your normal retirement age. For example, if you start receiving your early retirement benefit at age 59, but your normal retirement age is 62, your child allowance will not begin until you turn 62, provided that you still have eligible children under the age of 21 at that time. And finally, just like with the normal retirement benefit, your entitlement to the early retirement benefit starts the day after your separation from service. So once the benefit is processed and implemented, payments will be made retroactively to you from that date. The lump sum, similar to the normal retirement benefit, is optional. If you decide to take a lump sum, your monthly lifetime payments will be reduced in proportion to the lump sum amount that you choose. So the larger the lump sum you receive, the greater the reduction in your monthly payments will be. Now, the reduction factor. So the reduction factor will only apply to a retirement benefit that starts into payment before you reach your normal retirement age. Therefore, because you would start to receive your benefit before reaching your normal retirement age, the fund must apply a reduction factor to help balance the longer payment period and the overall impact it will have on the fund's resources. So when determining a reduction factor, the fund looks at two things. One, your age at the time of separation. We'll look at how many years and months you are younger than your normal retirement age. And two, the length of your contributor service, meaning the total number of years you've contributed to the fund at the time of your separation. The more contributory service years you have, the lower the reduction factor will be applied. If your early retirement age is 55, meaning you joined the fund's participation prior to 2014, then your reduction factors are as follows. If you have less than 25 years of contributory service at the time of your separation, then your reduction factor for early retirement is 6% per year and months that you're younger than your normal retirement age. So for example, if you retire at age 59 with a normal retirement age of 62, you will be 3 years younger than your normal retirement age. If you have less than 25 years of contributory service, your reduction factor would be 6% for each year you're younger than your normal retirement age. So in this case, the total reduction would be 18% of your base pension amount, which is the amount you would have received if you retired at your normal retirement age. And this reduction factor would apply for life. However, if you have between 25 years and 30 years of contributory service, your reduction factor would be lower, only 3% for each year you're younger than your normal retirement age. So again, if you retire at 59, so with 3 years earlier than your normal retirement age, your total reduction would be 9%, meaning 3 years times 3% of your base pension amount for life. If you have 30 years or more of contributory service, the reduction factor is even smaller, just 1% for each year you're younger than your normal retirement age. So in the same scenario of retiring at age 59, the reduction would be only 3% of your base pension amount. So as you can see, the more contributory service you have, the lower the reduction factor would be. So in our scenario of retiring 3 years earlier prior to reaching normal retirement age, with less than 25 years of contributory service, the reduction factor would be 18%. With 25 to 30 years of contributory service, it would be 9%. And with 30 or more years of contributory service, the reduction would be only 3%. Therefore, having at least 25 years of contributory service is crucial in minimizing the financial impact of early retirement, and having 30 years is even better. Since 2014, the reduction factors have been adjusted slightly. For participants with early retirement age of 58, the reduction factors are now 6% or 4% per year, depending on the length of their contributory service, and the 1% reduction factor is no longer applicable. And while the specifics may have changed, the same basic principles still apply. And finally, one important note here, the fund cannot apply the lower reduction factor, that is 1%, 3%, or 4% for more than 5 years. Meaning if someone retires more than 5 years before reaching their normal retirement age, and their reduced reduction factor is based on their length of contributory service, the lower reduction factor can only be applied for the first 5 years. And for any additional years of early retirement, the reduction factor will revert to the standard of 6% per year. So you can calculate the reduction factor yourself, but you don't have to. By using the estimate tool in your member self-service, the reduction factor will be automatically applied if you are retiring between your early and normal retirement age. The estimate you will receive will show the adjusted amounts. So for instance, in this example, the participant is retiring before reaching their normal retirement age, but has already reached their early retirement age. This participant would have 3 options: early retirement benefit with an option of taking lump sum, a deferred retirement benefit, which I will explain next, and a withdrawal settlement. Now, the deferred retirement benefit. This is the third and final retirement benefit offered by the fund. Like other retirement benefit, it provides a lifelong benefit that is paid in monthly installments. However, unlike the early and normal retirement benefit, the deferred retirement benefit does not include a lump sum option or child allowance. The deferred retirement benefit is different from the option to delay the choice or payment of your benefit, which I explained earlier. The deferred retirement benefit is available to anyone who has vested pension rights, regardless of their age at the separation, as long as they have not reached their normal retirement age at the time when they separate from service. For example, someone who separated at age 45 with vested pension rights can elect the deferred retirement benefit. And what does that mean? It means that if someone wants to receive a lifelong retirement benefit from the fund after separating from service, they may do so by electing the deferred retirement benefit. However, the fund won't start making payments until the former participant reaches at least their early retirement age. This means that these participants would have to wait until they reach age 55 or whatever their early retirement age is to start receiving their monthly payment. If you choose to start receiving if they choose to start receiving their deferred retirement benefit before their normal retirement age, a reduction factor will apply to their benefit for life, similar to the early retirement benefit. And as a reminder, there is no lump sum or child allowance associated with this benefit. However, this benefit also carries a potential surviving spouse's benefit. Finally, someone who elects a deferred retirement benefit and then rejoins the fund's participation later, after having a break in service of more than 36 months, may be eligible to restore their previous contributory service period, provided that this benefit is not yet in payment. You can determine your options after running an estimate of your entitlements. For example, if you separate before reaching your normal or early retirement age, the estimate tool will show you the options available, which are typically a deferred retirement benefit or a withdrawal settlement, provided that you have vested pension rights. So in this example, the estimate shows that the participants' deferred retirement benefit, if they wait until their normal retirement age of 62, would be approximately $35,000 per year, which is adjusted for the cost of living. There also would be a surviving spouse's benefit if the participant passes away in retirement and survived by their spouse. Alternatively, this participant could choose a one-time payment in the form of a withdrawal settlement in the amount of $258,000. So these are the options that will be available to someone who separates before reaching their normal or early retirement age and who have vested pension rights at the time of their separation. And as a reminder again, the deferred retirement benefit does not include a lump sum or child benefit. You would have the flexibility to choose when to begin your normal, when to begin receiving your benefit, which could be any time after reaching your early retirement age. And if you start your payments before reaching your normal retirement age, a reduction factor will be applied to your benefit, just like in an early retirement benefit. Here's another example of to show how the deferred retirement benefit works. The scenario is for someone whose age at the separation is between early and normal retirement age. So they will have three options: a withdrawal settlement, a deferred retirement, or early retirement benefit. If this participant chooses early retirement, with benefits starting immediately after their separation, their pension would be reduced based on the applicable reduction factor. So in this case, it's they would receive about $39,000 per year. On the other hand, if they choose the deferred retirement benefit and wait until their normal retirement age of 62, they will receive the full pension amount, around $66,000 per year, without any reduction factor applied. While the deferred retirement option offers a highly yearly amount, keep in mind that waiting means they will miss out on several years of retirement income. For example, if they take early retirement at age 57, they would be receiving the reduced amount for 5 years in the form of a early retirement benefit. However, waiting until age 62 means starting the higher payment, but with no pension income during those 5 years. So this is an important decision to make when considering your options at the time of your separation. If you would like to explore different scenarios for deferred retirement benefit, like starting the deferred retirement benefit at an age before your normal retirement age, you can request that estimate from the fund. The specific scenarios can't be run using the estimate tool in your member self-service portal, but the fund can provide them to you on the request basis. The estimate tool is still very useful for running standard retirement scenarios, including for the value of your full deferred retirement benefit. Now let's look at other benefits provided by the fund. You should know that you are covered for the risk of disability from the moment you become a member of the fund. It's not an option you can choose, but rather a benefit that you can apply for if needed. If your health issues cause you to be absent from work for a prolonged period, and it becomes clear that you won't be able to return to a long-term employment, you can apply for a disability benefit. And together with the UN Medical Service, the Disability Committee will decide whether your condition qualifies awarding you a disability benefit. The disability benefit provides monthly payments for as long as the disability lasts. There is no lump sum option available. However, it does have associated survivor's benefit for a surviving spouse and children. To maintain eligibility, you will need to undergo periodic medical reviews to assess whether you still meet the criteria for disability benefit. However, once you reach an early retirement age, and if you're still receiving disability benefits, your entitlement to that benefit will become permanent. At this point, you will no longer need to have medical review, and you will continue receiving the disability benefit for life. If you are awarded a disability benefit, the fund calculates it based on your income level at the time of your separation on disability. We'll look at the highest 36 months of your pensionable remuneration prior to your separation on disability to determine your income level. And for the purpose of calculating your rate of accumulation, we will assume that you continued contributing to the fund from the date of your separation until your normal retirement age, whether it's 62 or 65, depending on your situation. So essentially, the disability benefit is roughly equivalent to what your normal retirement benefit would have been if you continued working until your normal retirement age at the same level and step as when your disability was granted. And if you wish to learn more about disability benefit, please visit our website at the link provided on this slide. As previously mentioned, the child benefit is payable to each child of a participant who is entitled to the normal, early retirement or disability benefit, or who has died while in service. This benefit is payable until the child reaches the age of 21. If you have a child, if you have a disabled child, and you are in receipt of an early, normal, or disability benefit, you must apply to the UNSPC in the fund for the disability status for your child as soon as you separate from service. If your child is determined to be disabled by the fund's SPC Disability Committee due to illness or injury, they may continue receiving the child benefit beyond the age 21 for as long as the disability lasts. A periodic medical review of the child's condition may be required to confirm ongoing eligibility for the disabled child benefit, and you will be notified accordingly if this is something that is required. As a reminder, for early or normal retirement, the child allowance will begin when you reach your normal retirement age. And for disability benefit, your child allowance begins when your disability benefit starts. Finally, if you choose a deferred retirement benefit, the child allowance is not payable. There is no limit to the number of children eligible for the allowance, but there is a cap on the total amount that can be paid. So please be sure to submit birth certificates for all your children to your HR, even if they are not eligible to receive a child allowance from your organization while you're still in service. Up next, Christine will go over the survivor's benefit that the funds offers, but first, let's take a break. Current time in New York is 10:28, so if you could please be back by 10:40, so we could continue this presentation. Enjoy your break.
Hello and welcome back for the next part of the presentation. So we're going to now cover survivors' benefits and thereafter more practical information about the separation process, how to prepare, what is required, applicable timelines, and finally a quick walk over our website and UNJSPF member self-service. So big thanks to Dilba for taking us through the different benefit options the fund offers. I think the key takeaways are that there are different kinds of benefits, that in order to be entitled to a form of retirement benefit, you have to have so-called vested pension rights, meaning at least 5 years of contributory service in the fund. And that anyone who is younger than normal retirement age when they separate can always opt for a so-called withdrawal settlement, which is a one-time payout. So, as you have heard from Dilba, the different forms of retirement benefit and the disability benefit provide for survivors' benefits, as well as you are covered while a participant in the fund for the risk of death and disability, meaning if something happens to you and either for health reasons you can no longer work, you could apply for a disability benefit, or if a participant passes away while in service, there's coverage for their entitled survivors. And we are going to go over these survivors' entitlements now. So I will share my screen. And here we go. All right, so survivors' benefits. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, there are many tools on our website to help you understand pension topics. And these tools include videos. So there is a video dedicated to survivors' benefits, and I would very strongly encourage you all to watch this video so that you are fully aware of what your coverage is while you're a participant in the fund right now, while you're a staff member of a pension fund member organization, and of course to understand what would be potential survivors' entitlements if you were to pass away after separation while in receipt of a disability benefit or a retirement benefit from the fund. So in addition to that, I also think it is probably a good idea for all of us to download the survivors booklet that you can access on our website, and you will see resources in a bit. They are also included with links here in this presentation. I would say download that booklet and put it somewhere with your will, or share it in some form with your potential, with your dependents, with people close to you, so that they know what to do in the event that you pass away while in receipt of a retirement benefit or disability benefit, and they know where to turn, how to contact the fund, and of course have an idea of what potential entitlements from the fund could be. This is a good way for us to prepare for this event, which hopefully will not happen, of course, but if it does, at least our survivors have a sense of where to turn. Now, survivors' benefits, as Dilba mentioned in her presentation of retirement benefits and disability benefits, survivors' benefits are part of the coverage that we have as participants, but also as part of coverage in retirement or disability. So what are survivors' benefits? Generally, they are regular monthly payments to the entitled survivor or survivors. There is no lump sum payment. It is monthly payments. And for how long these kinds of benefits are payable will depend on the kind of survivor's benefit that we have to pay. Spouses are entitled to lifelong survivor's benefits. So a surviving spouse would receive a surviving spouse's benefit for life. Children normally are entitled to a survivor's benefit until the end of the month during which they turn 21. So you see there are different conditions that apply depending on what kind of survivor we are talking about. We will go a bit more into detail in the following slides. What you should also understand is that there is kind of a hierarchy of survivors. We have the group of so-called primary survivors, and those are the ones that would be first entitled. In other words, if you pass away, the fund will always verify whether any of those primary survivors in the first part of the slide might be entitled to a survivor's benefit. Here we are talking about surviving spouses, surviving children, or possibly even surviving ex-spouses. So that's the group of survivors that we first check whether anyone is entitled to a survivor's benefit. And if one or several of these primary survivors are entitled, we will pay these benefits in parallel. So it is absolutely possible that following the death of our former participant/retiree, a surviving spouse is entitled to a benefit payment, and one or several children are entitled to payments, possibly even an ex-spouse. That's more rare, but it could be. So just for you to understand that you might see that several people are entitled to a survivor's benefit stemming from one former participant in the fund. So following my death, my husband, and if I had children under 21, might all be entitled to a payment from the fund for different durations in time. Now, if there is no or no more a primary survivor entitled to a payment, then the fund will check whether there might be a secondary dependent surviving and entitled to a benefit from the fund. A secondary dependent could be either a sibling or a parent. So if you, while you're alive and while you're a participant in the fund, you are entitled, if you were entitled to a secondary dependent allowance from the UN or from your employing organization, and you continue to take care of this secondary dependent while in retirement, it is possible that if there is no surviving spouse entitled, no surviving ex-spouse, and no surviving children entitled to a form of regular monthly payment as a survivor from the UN pension fund following your death, then if there is a surviving secondary dependent, the fund would pay a benefit to the surviving secondary dependent. To a parent, that would be a lifelong payment, and to a sibling, it would be payable until the end of the month of their 21st birthday. So would be a similar condition as for spouses, if it's a secondary dependent parent that is surviving, and similar conditions as for children, if it is a secondary dependent sibling that is surviving. But the key message here is, if you have any of the three primary survivors entitled, we do not pay a secondary dependent. However, if there is no primary survivor entitled, then we would pay a secondary dependent, provided, of course, that you were actually providing financially for that secondary dependent until your death. Now, benefits explained one by one. There is a lot of information on our website. I know I repeat this again and again, but truly there is. So please use the links and visit the web pages that are relevant if you're interested in this topic. Let's look at the first kind of survivor's benefit, the surviving spouse. A surviving spouse's benefit is payable to a spouse to whom you were married during your participation in the fund. It doesn't matter whether you were married to them 20 years before separation or 1 day before separation, as long as you were legally married to that spouse while still a participant in the UN pension fund, and that spouse remains married to you until your death, whether death in service and in participation or death after service while you are in receipt of a periodic, meaning monthly, payment from the fund, then if you were married while you are a participant and remained married until your death to that same spouse, that surviving spouse would be entitled to a surviving spouse's benefit from the UN pension fund. The payment, as I mentioned, will be for life. So regardless of whether your surviving spouse may or may not remarry, we will continue to pay this benefit for life. It will be adjusted for cost of living over time, just like your benefit would be, and is payable in monthly installments. There is never a lump sum payment part of a surviving spouse's benefit. Generally speaking, the amount payable to a surviving spouse is 50% of your full benefit entitlement amount. And as Dilba mentioned earlier, if you're entitled to a retirement, normal or early retirement benefit, and you opted for the payment of a lump sum together with that retirement benefit, your spouse would get 50% of the full value of your entitlement prior to you taking out the lump sum and receiving a reduced retirement benefit. So Dilba illustrated that earlier. And again, the surviving spouse's benefit would be 50% of your full entitlement prior to a possible lump sum commutation. So it's a very generous payment. So these are the general conditions for a surviving spouse's benefit. If you have more questions about this, please visit the survivor's benefits page on our website. Next, the divorced surviving or ex-spouse. We would, under very specific conditions, potentially pay a surviving divorced spouse a benefit. There is a set of conditions that need to be fulfilled by that surviving ex-spouse for them to be entitled. The first important condition is that you must have been married to that ex-spouse for at least 10 years while you were paying contributions to the UN pension fund. So that's a key condition. If that condition is fulfilled, there are other conditions that would also have to be met by that surviving ex-spouse. A next condition is we in the fund need to have your divorce decree on file, and we will check whether in that divorce decree there is an express written exclusion for that ex-spouse from UN pension fund survivors' entitlements. There are divorce decrees that are very clear in that regard, and that will say ex-spouse so-and-so is not entitled and renounces any entitlement from the UN pension fund. And the reason is probably because you had an arrangement where you paid off a certain amount to that ex-spouse. In any case, the pension fund will take into account a decision made by a court that decided and endorsed that the ex-spouse should not receive any payment from the UN pension fund as a survivor in the future, if ever that situation materialized. So we will look at that divorce decree, and we will ask you to submit a copy of the divorce decree whenever it becomes available to the fund. Now, if there is no such express exclusion of an ex-spouse in your divorce decree, so in other words, we don't know, there is an ex-spouse and the divorce decree is silent about payments from the UN pension fund, then there is potentially an entitlement. So if the 10-year marriage condition while you were a participant is fulfilled, the divorce decree does not expressly exclude the ex-spouse. The next condition we would check is, did your death occur within 15 years from your date of divorce? If the answer is yes, you did die within 15 years from your divorce date, there might be an entitlement. Normally, the ex-spouse then would be entitled to regular monthly survivor's benefits. However, if you died more than 15 years from the date of divorce, in that case, normally the ex-spouse is not entitled to a survivor's benefit, except if you were under the obligation to pay maintenance to your ex-spouse at the time of your death. And then finally, if an ex-spouse is entitled, we will start paying survivor's benefits to an ex-spouse only from ex-spouses age 40 onward. If they are younger, then they would have to wait until reaching age 40. So what you see here is, yes, the fund, under certain conditions, may pay an ex-spouse a survivor's benefit. However, there is a whole list of conditions that need to be fulfilled by this ex-spouse. And I will say we pay very few survivors' ex-spouse benefits or divorced surviving spouses benefits, because in many cases, these conditions are not all fulfilled, and then there is no entitlement. If there is an entitlement, we will pay. So we will go by our regulations and rules in the fund, which set out the conditions for such payment. So you cannot give us a notice or a written statement saying, please, I want to override these conditions. My ex-spouse shall receive nothing. This is not possible. We have to apply the regulations and rules of the fund as stated. If such benefit is payable, it can be anywhere between 50% of your full own entitlement and less. If there is both an ex-spouse and a surviving spouse, we will divide the amounts payable, the 50% max, in shares proportionate to years of marriage. So keep that in mind. These are the conditions. If you have questions about this payment, please also visit not just the survivor's webpage, but also the page on divorce on our website. Now, if you marry after separation from service, so you marry a new spouse after having separated, while you are in disability or in retirement, normally a spouse married after separation is not entitled to a benefit from the fund, a survivor's benefit from the fund. So in that case, if you would like a new spouse that you married after separation to be entitled to some form of survivor's benefit in the future, should you pass away before that spouse that you married after separation, you would have to reach out to the fund within 1 year latest from the date of marriage, inform the fund of the marriage, and request an estimate for an annuity payment that you would have to make to provide for a potential survivor's benefit for your new spouse. If ever you then elect, based on the estimate we would provide you, to reduce your own benefit by a certain amount for life, to pay for the potential future survivor's benefit, and that's called an annuity payment. If you're willing to do that, we would implement it, and then within a certain time, that entitlement will be available, provided, of course, you predecease your spouse. So in other words, if you choose to purchase an annuity for a spouse married after separation, you will reduce your own retirement or disability benefit for life by a certain amount. Dilba already talked about the child's benefit and disabled child's benefit. Here, I just want to highlight that the fund will provide for surviving child's benefits to surviving children, including, of course, disabled children. The difference between a surviving child and a surviving disabled child is that if a child is recognized as disabled by the UN Pension Fund, in that case, we will pay that surviving child's benefit beyond the child's age 21. We will pay a disabled child for as long as the disability lasts. And as Dilba explained, in order for a disabled child to be recognized by the fund, you'd have to apply, you have to provide certain documents to the fund and the UN medical or your SPC medical officer. And based on that documentation, the fund will determine whether a child is recognized as disabled, and if so, will then provide for a surviving child's benefit to the disabled child for as long as that child is disabled. What we see is that most of the disabled child's benefits we pay are lifelong payments we make. So That is important to retain. If you have any questions about this, please contact the fund and make sure that if you're separating and you have a child that is disabled, to immediately inform the fund so that we can give you guidance on how to fulfill the process to apply for a disabled child allowance / potential future cover your disabled child for a potential future disabled surviving child's benefit. Of course, all of this applies to those who will receive a form of regular retirement or disability benefit from the fund. The only benefit where we never pay a form of child's benefit or surviving child's benefit, as Dilbar explained, is the deferred retirement benefit. Now, what is the amount of a child's benefit? Generally speaking, it is dependent on whether there's also another parent surviving and entitled to a regular monthly payment from the fund. There are certain conditions that apply, but the amount that a child receives could be different if there is a surviving other parent entitled to a benefit from the fund, a survivor's benefit, or if there is not. If there isn't the other parent entitled to a regular monthly survivor's benefit from the fund, the surviving child's benefit would be normally higher. Generally speaking, it's about, at the highest level, about 1/3 of your entitlement in retirement or in disability. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if there are entitlements from different survivors that are primary survivors, we will pay these entitlements in parallel. So one receiving a payment does not exclude someone else. Now, repeat, if none of the foregoing potential survivors are entitled to a benefit, then the fund will check whether a secondary dependent might be entitled to a survivor's benefit. Again, a secondary dependent could be a parent or a sibling, one or the other. The maximum dependent we pay is 1. So in that case, as I mentioned, what is the amount or the benefit condition for a parent? It's the same as for a spouse. So if there is no entitled surviving spouse and other primary dependent, but there is a surviving parent entitled to a secondary dependent allowance while you were working and a participant, and you continue to provide for that secondary dependent while in receipt of a benefit from the fund, following your death, if that person, that secondary dependent, is entitled, we would pay an amount equal to a surviving spouse's benefit for life to that person, to that parent. If this secondary dependent that is found to be entitled by the fund is a sibling, we would pay under the same conditions as for a child, a surviving child. Resources where you can find more information. As mentioned, there is a whole web page dedicated to survivors' benefits, detailing each of the benefits, the conditions of eligibility, and additional resources like a video, a booklet, and also other information for non-traditional unions, for example, that you can find on this page. There is also a contact page on our website for survivors if they have to report the death of one of our pension fund members. That page I will show you in a moment so that you know where to find it and you could share that information with your potential survivors if you deem that is a good idea. Now, what happens if there are no survivors entitled to a regular monthly payment from the fund following your death? Of course, that happens. And in that case, does the fund pay anything? So here the question, what happens if I have no spouse, no children, no secondary dependent, and following my death, there are no survivors entitled to regular monthly payments from the fund? The answer is the fund will always check whether following your death, there is someone entitled to regular monthly payments as a survivor. If the answer is no, or if the answer is yes, but only for a very short period, in any case, the fund will always check if there is a residual of your own contributions to the fund and the interest you earned on them that was not paid out to you or any entitled survivor. And if the answer is yes, there is a residual of your own contributions and the interest you earned, and there's no more survivor entitled to any regular monthly payments, then that residual amount stemming from your own contributions to the fund, that residual amount that could not be paid out either to you or to an entitled survivor, is payable by the fund to the person or people or entities that you designated to receive a residual settlement payment from the fund. In other words, the residual settlement is a final payout from the fund once we have confirmed that you are no longer alive and there is no more any survivor entitled to regular monthly payments from the fund. So if at that point we still have an amount of money corresponding to what you contributed to the fund and the interest you earned, or a part of that amount, if we still have that sitting in the fund, it's a residual that needs to be paid out, and it's called a residual settlement. So it's basically, if you look at the bottom, your own contribution plus interest minus any benefit the fund has paid out to you, minus any benefit possibly paid out to potential or to survivors entitled to these kinds of regular monthly payments. And whatever remains, if anything, is the residual settlement. Now, who would receive such residual settlement? It would be payable to whom you designated on a special form called the A2 form, designation of recipient of a residual settlement from the fund. There is a specific form that you probably completed and we have on file, but if you are not sure whether you did complete it, I would say go to your member self-service later, download the form, I will tell you which one it is, complete it, date it, hand sign it, and upload it back to the fund. The fund, if ever there is a residual settlement payable, will go by the latest dated form on file that was duly completed. This is a form on the right-hand side. That's what it looks like. A2 form, PENS A2 form. So here you would say who you are with your name, your organization you work for, your duty station, and you would fill in the name or names of those you would like to be recipient of such a residual settlement. Is it likely that one day we will pay a residual settlement? No. The vast majority of cases, there is no residual settlement, but it is possible, and we have, of course, payments where we make a residual settlement payment. And if it is payable, if we have this form on file, it's very easy in the sense that we identify who should receive this money based on your election. We contact that person or these people, we inform them, we receive payment instructions from them and probably proof of identity, and then we transmit the money to them into their bank account. It's a fairly straightforward process. If we do not have this form on file, then we have to go through the process of the estate and have to have an executor of the estate designated, who then would be the recipient of this payment and distribute it in line with local and applicable law. So in other words, by completing this form and submitting it to the fund, you are making the life of those who potentially might be entitled to this payment in the future easier. It is up to you whom you designate, but please, please understand that we are going to look at this form only if we have determined that there is no surviving spouse entitled, no surviving ex-spouse, no surviving children, and no surviving secondary dependent who would receive regular monthly payments from the fund in line with our regulations and rules. So it's only as a last step before we are closing your record that we would check if there is a residual, and if so, whom to pay it to. And remember that if you elected a lump sum as part of your early or normal retirement benefit, and if that is the maximum lump sum you could get, you would have exhausted the equivalent of your own contributions and interest. In that case, there is never a residual settlement payable. Okay, so just remember that, yes, it is good to have this form on file for the possibility of a residual being payable. It is unlikely that a residual will be payable one day, because in the vast majority of cases, we will pay out the equivalent of what you contributed plus the interest you earned in the form of lump sum payments and regular monthly retirement or disability payments long before our former participant passes away. And of course, we will always continue to pay entitled survivors whatever they may be entitled to. However, it is important to have this form on file for the possibility of such payment becoming payable. Okay, so that is a residual settlement, which would be the last kind of payment payable following our former participant's death, either in service or in disability or retirement, and provided no other survivor is entitled to a monthly regular payment from the fund, and provided there is actually a residual of your own contributions and interest following that assessment by the fund, or at the time of that assessment by the fund. We have concluded the overview of survivors' benefits and residual settlement, and will now look at practical information pertaining to separation from service. Now, shifting gear. What is required when you separate from service? How can you prepare? What should you prepare? And what should you expect in terms of the process and the timelines that apply? First thing to understand is that in order for that process of separation for pension purposes to run smoothly and for you to receive your benefit, there are 3 parties that all have or each have to fulfill their responsibilities. You are one of these parties. The participant / staff member / you have to ensure that you provide the documents that are required from you, but also that you make an informed and correct benefit election, you complete the appropriate form correctly and submit it to the fund, together with required supporting documents. And before all of that, to make sure that you have checked your personal data on file with the fund and confirm that your name is correctly spelled, your date of birth is correct as recorded in our records. And ideally, of course, your family situation is correctly reflected, so that all is in good order when we receive your records from you and or your documents from you and from your employing organization. So if you have any doubts, please make sure to check your member self-service and in there your personal data, and you could definitely also check the pension statement that Dilbar showed earlier, to check in the top line in the pension statement, spelling of your name, your date of birth as recorded in our records, and your family status. And if you see everything is in good order, that's perfect. If, however, you see there's something off, maybe the date of birth is inverse, the months and the dates, that sometimes happens, or it's wrong simply, or the spelling of your name is, especially your family name, but your name in general is not correct, please go back to your employing organization to check with them what they have on record and make the corrections if necessary with them, so they can then report the correct data to the fund and we can take action as applicable. The second party in this process of separation that has a duty to submit documents to the fund is your employing organization. HR and payroll in your organization have to submit certain documents to the fund in order for us to be able to do our part of the process. And the third party in the process is, of course, the UN pension fund, the UNJSPF, where we have a duty to verify all the data pertaining to your pension file, your contributory service, your contributions to the fund, etc., and make sure that we calculate your benefit correctly based on your profile, meaning your date of entry into the fund, the length of your contributory service, if you're opting for a form of retirement benefit, your age at the time of separation, and of course, to make sure that you receive your benefit within due time from separation, provided we can do that based on the documents you and your organization provided to us and the data we have on file for you. So the fund will go through an entire process of verification and audit of your record to make sure that we pay you the amount you are entitled to, and we pay it to the correct account in your name. So the three of us have to join hands and make sure that we work well together, and each of us fulfills our obligations to make sure that you get your benefit in a timely manner following separation. So more specifically, what should you do to prepare for separation? How can you prepare? One step, you are attending this town hall. That's excellent. You get information. I hope you walk away with information that will help you use member self-service, run estimate, complete your payment instructions form, and submit all the documents required from you to the fund. Most importantly, you make an informed benefit election that is the right one for you. What else? Register for member self-service, very important, because some of the tools you need to prepare are inside your member self-service. If you have any issues, contact us. I will show you in a moment how and where, so that we can help you use member self-service for preparation and for submission of document if that is the case. Now, everyone who separates and makes a benefit election should have run an estimate, especially if you have options. If you have more than one benefit option when you separate, make sure you have seen an estimate so that you decide what option is the best for you. The question often is, how accurate are estimates? The closer you are to separation, the more accurate they will be, because they are based on the most recent data we have on file for you. Is it 100% accurate? Probably not, because the data that we are projecting into the future till your separation, that you entered the separation date, that you entered in the separation, in this estimate tool, that data is based on up to the most recent year end. So why? Because we have year-end reporting where we receive data for you till the most recent year end from your employing organization reported to the fund. The current year, the one during which you are separating, we don't have that data in our records right now. We will get that data as part of the documents your organization will submit to the fund, and then apply it at the time of calculating your benefit. But that means that when you're running an estimate, there might be a slight discrepancy between your, let's say, pensionable remuneration rates that we are using for your case and your actual pensionable remuneration that we should use based on the fact that you had maybe a step increase since 2024 in 2025. Is it huge, the discrepancy? No. But in most cases, I would say your estimate is close to what you can actually receive, or you will actually receive. And the closer you are to separation, the more likely is that it is accurate. If I run an estimate today for a separation in 10 years, the estimate tool doesn't know my future career progression, adjustments to pensionable remuneration rates, all of that we cannot predict. So it is a conservative estimate, but it is definitely an estimate that will help you make a benefit election and should be fairly close to your actual future entitlements. If you have any doubt, please, in any case, read in the estimate page all the text that is there. There are some disclaimers about some possibility of data discrepancies. If that applies to your case, please reach out to the fund so we can help address any estimate questions. But generally speaking, for most of you, it should be a straightforward process of running an estimate. The pension town halls like today's are all recorded and posted on our website. I will show you the page in a moment, as are the presentations we are giving. So you can always access that information on our website. You can also take a pension e-learning that is also available on our website. It's an interactive module of about an hour, and depending on what module you're looking at, it could be an hour and a half. If you are not sure about some of the issues that we're discussing today, maybe rewatch the part on the web recording that we are making that we are publicizing, or take the e-learning module, and of course use the pension fund website. And if you have questions that cannot be answered via member self-service, via the website of the fund, please contact us or your SPC if you work for an agency. And then here you have a page that gives you all the key pages that you should visit as preparation for retirement and separation. So I'm not going through this now, but you can refer back to this presentation, which will be posted on our website, and see under the second item here, web pages with separation specific information. If you link, you'll see there are pages on separating and retiring, the benefit options, an overview of the separation process, including required documents, info on retirement ages, how to submit documents to the fund, survivor's benefits. The pages on taxation and after-service health insurance are mostly to tell you that we cannot give you information in this regard, but we have some basic information you can access. The fund is not equipped and cannot give you taxation advice or ASHI, after-service health insurance related advice. For that, please consult the health insurance team or your HR for ASHI, or for taxation purposes, a financial advisor. And then finally, for those of you retiring, you may want to also consult the webpage on retiree associations. They are not part of the pension fund, but they are important partners of the fund. And most importantly, there are many retiree associations in many countries in the world that are an amazing source for information about pension in that country. So if you know you're going to reside in the future in a given country, let's say India or France or wherever it may be, there might be a retiree association, and on the webpage of the retiree associations of former UN staff, you will find member associations listed by country of residence. So I would say if you are retiring, you may want to check that list and see if there's going to be or if there is an association in the country where you intend to retire, because there might be very useful source for information if you decide to join them as a member. Voila. So what should you do specifically to prepare? I already said, check your personal data, run an estimate, and if you have questions about the process and how to submit documents to the fund, you can reach out to your HR to make sure you follow the process as indicated by your specific office. Different organizations have different processes, so there isn't a one-fits-all. I would say always check with your HR to make sure you follow the right process. Most organizations send out separation letters that include information on how to prepare for pension benefits, like the submission of documents to pension. And they also tell you how to submit documents, whether through them or directly to the fund via your member self-service. You have to complete payment instructions. There's information in this presentation on how to do that. Depending on how many years of contributory service you have at the time of separation, you have to complete a certain form. If you have less than 5 years of contributory service when you separate, you must complete form PENS E6. If, however, you have 5 or more years of contributory service when you separate, you must complete form PENS E7. Both forms and all pension forms are available inside your member self-service under the e-forms tab, and you can download the form there, print it. It's pre-completed with a barcode, your name, and your pension fund reference number, the so-called unique ID number. It's a 9-digit number that we need to make sure we assign all documents you submit correctly to your file. So you have to complete the correct form correctly. So you have to make sure you complete the pages that are the ones that apply to your benefit election and payment information. Or if you decide to not request the payment of a benefit, but to elect this freezing option or deferment of choice that Dilba explained earlier, where you say, I don't want to make a benefit choice, I don't want to receive a payment, in that case, you would only complete one page, the page number 1, to tell the fund, I'm not making a benefit election yet, and I am not actually requesting payment. Instead, I want to freeze my holdings in the fund because I'm hoping to return to active service and fund participation fairly quickly, and I want to then continue my participation in the fund. So that's the option Dilba explained. If that is what you want, you have to accordingly complete your form. If, however, you say, no, I want to be paid as soon as possible, then you would probably throw away page 1 of each form or of the form you are completing, and instead complete page 2 or 2 and 3, depending on which form you're using. So you have to complete the forms correctly. You have to make a benefit election on the form, and you have to provide payment instructions, meaning bank account information, the currency in which you want to be paid, and of course an address and a telephone number and email so that the fund could contact you if needed. And the form must be hand-signed by you and have a date. And then, if you choose to submit that form to the fund via your member self-service, you make a scanned version, a PDF or a JPEG, and you upload it back to the fund. We'll look at that a bit more in a moment, but the payment instructions form is one key document you have to provide to the fund. In addition to the payment instructions or PI form, you have to submit copies of the following supporting documents. Everyone must submit copy of a valid government-issued picture ID document that includes your name, your date of birth, validity, and a signature, handwritten signature. If you don't have a signature on your ID document, you have to download a form called S1 from our website and also provide that. Usually, ID documents include a signature. So normally it's enough to provide a valid government-issued picture ID that includes your signature and the other details. What is that document? It could be a passport, or it could be a national ID document or a driver's license. The UNLP is not considered a government-issued ID document. We do not accept that. And we also must receive from everyone copy of a recent bank statement. Your name and bank account number must be provided on that bank statement. And this information, name and bank account, must match the data or the details you provided as part of your payment instructions on the PI form. So this is required from everyone. If you are separating and entitled to a disability benefit or electing a retirement benefit, you have to submit additional supporting documents. In that case, we also need, as applicable to your case, copies of your marriage certificate if you're married and of the valid government-issued ID document for your spouse. If you provide passports for yourself and your spouse, passport copies, that's good, but if you provide other kinds of ID, we also need copies of birth certificates. If you have children that might be entitled to a benefit from the fund, you have to provide birth certificates for every child. And if you're divorced from a spouse to whom you were married while a participant, we also want to receive a copy of the divorce decree. And finally, if you're not sure whether we have a valid A2 form on file for you, that is the residual settlement declaration or designation, then you should also provide a newly completed, dated, and hand-signed Form A2. You cannot currently check if A2 is on file unless you recently submitted it via Member Self-Service. But if you submitted it in a different form than Member Self-Service in the recent past, you would not be able to check in your Member Self-Service whether we have your A2 form on file. In that case, just submit a new one so that you're sure it's on file. In very rare cases, if you don't have a bank account, we would be able to pay you via check in care of a UN office. That is the exception, but it is possible. Generally speaking, we pay only into bank accounts in your name, or if it's a joint account, it must include your name, but we do not pay to any third parties. How can you submit your documents to the fund? Via Member Self-Service, unless your organization has instructed you to submit it via their HR. So check with your organization to make sure that you know which is the right way. And if they say you submitted via your Member Self-Service with the fund, then there is a document upload tab where you can submit your payment instructions and supporting documents. In that case, no need to send these documents to the fund. Only if you don't have access to Member Self-Service and your organization is not submitting your documents on your behalf, would you have to mail the original payment instruction form plus the copies of the supporting documents to the fund by pouch or postal mail or special courier. That is very exceptional. The vast majority of separating staff submit their documents via their UN Pension Fund Member Self-Service portal or have their organization submit the documents to us. A reminder once more that you have these two choices, either to receive a payment as soon as possible after separation or to not receive a payment, but to defer your choice and payment of benefit under Article 32. So here a reminder that if you don't want to receive a payment, but you hope to rejoin the fund very soon as a participant, within 36 months from your separation date, then you can elect the deferment of choice option on page 1 of your payment instructions form, in which case only page 1 should be submitted. However, if you do want to make a choice and receive your payment as soon as possible from the fund, then of course you have to submit accordingly your benefit election and your payment instructions or account information, etc. And you have to submit either page 2 or 2 and 3 of the pages only to the fund. So that's just a reminder. Now, as part of your preparation, we said you have to run an estimate. Reminder, how to run an estimate, please go to the Estimate tab in your Member Self-Service, enter the date of separation you're considering, run the estimate. Don't enter a fixed lump sum amount the first time you run an estimate because you want to see the initial estimate giving you the maximum lump sum payable if applicable to your case. Once you have hit submit, this little wheel will turn on the top, and once it tells you it's ready, you can now check your estimate. You go to the Documents tab, slightly above, and there you will then see your estimate published. You can click on it and you will see your estimate. Dilba explained already how to read the estimates. Just a reminder that the estimate will know what your contributory service should be at the time of separation and accordingly will show you the according benefit options for your specific case. And if in your case you have the option to an early retirement benefit, it will tell you the amount payable, including already the reduction factor. So in other words, what you see here in the estimate is the amount that would be estimated as payable and already takes account the reduction factor for early retirement if that is part of your options. Similarly, the withdrawal settlement in the estimate will include the increase, if applicable to your case, by 10% per year and prorated months that you contributed more than 5 years to the fund. So the estimate is intelligent and provides you all this information so that you can make an informed benefit decision. For the forms, If you are not sure about how to complete the e-form or the pension fund payment instructions form, here's a list. You can refer to this later when you access this presentation on our website. It explains how to complete the forms, and it gives you a visual guide on what to do, what to complete, how, and under what condition. So I won't go through this here, but I will say one thing. If you have several benefit options, only one box should be marked as checked on your page when you submit your payment instructions. There should never be more than one check mark on this page number 2 of Form PENS E7 for those who have a choice to make between different benefit options. And again, don't forget, original signature and date must be on the form before you make a PDF to submit it electronically in your member self-service. We do not accept electronic signatures. There is a video about how to prepare, sorry, I didn't want to launch the video, but there's a video about how to prepare for separation and other items that will be helpful that I encourage you to watch. Caution, that's very, very blinking to alert you, but once your benefit has been processed based on your payment instructions and benefit election, and it's in payment, we will not change or accept any changes to your benefit election. So if you selected a benefit election, including a lump sum, we start paying you, and then you realize, oh, maybe I should have not taken a lump sum. It's too late. At that stage, you cannot change your benefit election. So make sure to see an estimate, at least one or several, and make an informed benefit election so that you are choosing what you need, what you want, and what you can get, and you don't regret a benefit election after implementation. Now, your employing organization, what do they have to do? They will have to submit 2 mandatory separation documents to the fund, one from HR, one from payroll. HR has to submit a so-called separation personal action that will provide us with the details for your case, not just your name, but your family situation, whether you have dependents that are declared to your employer. It will tell us your separation date, your grade and step at separation, and other details. So that information is important because it will inform us when we, first of all, we have to do a data check, but then also it may influence or will influence, of course, if we see that you have a secondary dependent declared, for example, and receive a secondary dependent allowance, that's important information potentially for the future in case we ever have to pay a survivor's benefit. Now, the second document is your separation notification from your payroll office, which is basically the current year data for your case to inform us of your pensionable remuneration rates during that current year, contributions, if you had any periods of leave without pay, break in service, part-time work or other, which is important information to calculate your benefit correctly. So both of these documents are required and must be submitted to the fund. It depends on your employing organization how long it takes to submit this to the fund. But until we have received those 2 documents from your employing organization, plus all the documents required from you, we will not be able to start the processing of your benefit. I would say it depends on the organizations, but we receive these documents somewhere between 3 to 4 weeks, up to 6 weeks following separation for a separated staff, and it depends on the employing organization. Some organizations are faster, others are slower. So the fund depends on your employing organization to receive these documents and depends on you to receive all the documents required from you so that we can start to do our job. Once we have received all required documents for your case, duly completed in the right format, and provided no discrepancies are noted when we review all these documents and your case details, the fund usually processes a new benefit within 15 business days from the date of receipt of the latest of the required documents. So we cannot count 15 business days from your separation date because we won't have all the required documents, including those from your organization, immediately following your separation. It always takes time to receive the documents from your organization because they have to complete certain due diligence steps and verifications before they can generate those documents. And generally, it requires you to have separated for them to be able to complete that due diligence process in their offices. So, in simpler terms, please be aware that when you separate, all you can do is make sure that your data is correct, you're in good standing with your organization, and you have done everything to prepare and submit the documents that you have to submit for pension purposes, either directly to the fund or to your organization, so they submit them to the fund. It then depends on your employing organization and how long it takes for the fund to receive the separation personnel action, or SEPA, and the separation notification, also called SEP or PF4, so that we can start our process on our side. Again, from the date of receipt of the last required or the complete set of required separation documents from you and from your organization, it usually takes the fund 15 business days from the date of receipt of that complete set of documents to implementation, provided no discrepancies were noted in your case during the process of verification, calculation, and audit of your entitlements. If there are discrepancies, the fund has a duty to clarify them, either with you, if it's something that you need to clarify, or with your employing organization, and we can proceed to continuing the processing of your benefit only once everything is correct and clear. The vast majority of cases, I would say, I think currently it's over 92% of cases, of separation cases, are processed within 15 business days from receipt of the complete set of required documents by the fund. So you have to check with your organization what is the standard time frame of submission of the separation documents from HR and payroll. So you know, okay, it takes 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever applies in your office, and then add to that 15 business days. What does the fund have to do once we receive your documents? I already mentioned it, so I won't repeat it, but it's basically an entire verification of your history of contributions to the fund up to separation and of the data pertaining to your file. And that is a process that every single case goes through, which is also an assurance because it means that we verify to make sure that the correct amount is paid to you in terms of entitlements. How can you know whether the fund has received the required separation documents? There is a tool called a tracking tool inside your member self-service under the tab called Proof Documents. Once we have received at least one of the required separation documents, either your payment instructions and the document from HR, the separation PA, and the document from payroll, the PF4. Once we receive at least one of these documents, this page will be populated with this information, an explanation of the process, and at the bottom a box that shows you whether we have received and at what date the given document. You see 3 documents because those are the key documents that will trigger automated processes in the fund. Once we have received and accepted the 3 documents, the process is running. And if you then say, okay, well, from now 15 business days, how do I count that? Go to the latest dated document date in this box and count 15 business days into the future. At that time, you can go into Member Self-Service under your disbursement tab, the second from top, and you would see if any payment has been made at that time. So within 15 business days from receipt of all required documents. If that is the case, you will see the payments there. If within the 15 business days and maybe a few more days, let's say give it 3 to 4 weeks, you don't see a payment, you can contact your organization to check, or you can contact us to check what is going on. And we will, of course, update you if there's any issue. Normally, hopefully, you should see the payment within the 15 business days. That is for the process. Now, the pension toolkit, pension fund website, and member self-service. We will have a look at the different tools available to you so that you can use them, hopefully, and get information as you need when you need it. I will take you right now to the website and show you there what I think are the key pages that you should be aware of. Sorry, I'm pulling over the page. I've prepared that page. It is. I hope you can see it. So here is our pension fund website, UNJSPF.org. If you haven't been on it, I would say visit us, visit our website. So you have language options. You can either navigate our website in English or in French, which are our working languages in the fund. I'm going to do this in English since today is a session in English. You have a search function here on top. If you have a topic you are specifically interested in, you could simply do a search. Or you can access key information using these vignettes under what is your situation. You could identify what your situation is. It could be that you are a participant in the fund and you have information in that regard, or that you are separating or retiring and you have information in that regard, etc. If you go to one of these vignettes, you will have a selection of key pension web pages that we think are key in the context of that situation. Or if you say, I just want to see all the web pages you have and see if there are topics I'm interested in, you can go here to the menu on top for clients. And if you don't want to select a specific situation, you go to all topics. Click there and it will take you to this page. Here you have all topics for which we have individual web pages with resources on each page for that topic. What topics are we looking at? Many. I think if you are preparing for separation, key web pages are benefit estimates, benefit options. Benefit options is an excellent page to give you a reminder of what the different options are, basically what Dilba took you through today, in the form of a bit of a summary information. It's not as detailed, but it does give you a lot of information. So here you could check again, what is it again? A deferred retirement versus a full retirement versus delaying my election, etc. You also have access to these charts that might be helpful to understand your options a bit better. Here, a chart to say, based on length of contributory service and your age, you can look which would be your benefit options. Or, sorry, let me close this. This is always a bit of a problem. I can't get to the page. Never mind. But under the benefit comparison chart, you'd have broken down by type of benefit an explanation for each of the benefits. And then there's some other resources linked. This video, which I think is a very good video to explain your options, and you get a different version of explaining it to you. So that is one page that I think is very useful. This is the comparison chart. Now, another useful page is the overview of the separation process here. That looks like this. Why is that good? Because it's basically a breakdown of what I just explained to you in terms of what are the roles of each of us, you, the staff, the organization, the fund, and a checklist of the required separation documents. The participant, meaning you, have to submit what or do what. Here's a summary. And then what does your organization have to do? And what is the overall processing timeline? I believe this is very useful information. It's a repeat of what we told you today, but it might be useful. Another useful page is separation. Here, this one, which again, there is a video retiring or separating, how to prepare. and a breakdown again of the key questions we get for separation. Okay, so these are some of the pages, but there are many others. Survivor's benefits, how to submit documents to the fund, how if I need to update my marital status or any other personal information, etc. So that is under for clients. If you're very interested in the investments of the fund, visit the pages under this tab, the menu historical fund performance. Here you would see what is the current value of the fund. Takes a moment to load, but it's giving you the date at which the latest asset value was made available. Sorry, I think this is just because of bandwidth, but this is where you can find important information about the investments of the fund. And then you have under resources here, information about member self-service, pension e-learning modules, if you're interested to take those, information about these pension town hall sessions, all videos on one page, informative videos, booklets, link to the Retiree Association page, and other. So the pension town hall sessions, like this one today, you asked, can I get the recording? Can I get the PowerPoint? Yes. Here you see on this page where we have some FAQs and we have the list of past events, and we will soon post the next event date for the next pension town hall, which will be next month. You have always included for the past events the recording and the presentation. So yes, you have access to this, and we will provide you with the recording and presentation for today under this page here in the next couple of days. I want to get rid of that breakout. Okay. And then we have another page, which is about the fund, where you also have information about actuarial matters, if that is something you're interested in. And here under Contact Us, you have the contact page to contact us in the fund. So this is obviously important, because if you need to reach out to us, this is where you should come to contact us. You can send us a message, in which case you should identify yourself as who you are, a participant. You should tell us what we can help you with, for example, future entitlements, whatever it is, maybe, or maybe you want an estimate, but that you can run yourself. So maybe, let's say, future entitlement fund participation, and then specifically, maybe your benefit options or whatever you want. So in that case, you have a link to pages that might be helpful to answer your question. If you say, I have read these pages, you can move on. You provide your pension fund reference number. If you don't know it, you can request it by going to this link here, don't know my UID, your title, your name, say I give my stuff, there you go. You don't need to provide a phone number if you don't want to, but you could. And then you give the description of what you actually want from us. If you want to give an attachment, you can do that. You have to do the Robert thing, you submit. Oh, okay, I didn't select my employing organization. Let's say I am in peacekeeping. All right, I submit. Obviously, this is a test. Then it takes a moment, unless there's something, oh, I didn't give my UID. Sorry. I just wanted to show you how this works. And then you get this confirmation of submission of your query. This is important because you have now a reference number showing that you submitted your query for this topic on this date at this time, and it will give you the details necessary. So in that case, that information is useful to you if you need to follow up in the future. The fund will receive your query. It will be assigned to the correct team and the correct team of experts to review and respond. So this is the correct way of submitting a written query to the fund. Now, if you want to visit us, let me just go back to. Okay, if you want to visit us in New York or Geneva, there's information on walk-in services, the opening hours, and the opening days. Please always make sure to check if there's any special event that prevents us from opening on a given day. But normally we are open in Geneva and New York 2 days per week on Tuesdays and Thursdays for half days. So if you need to visit us, that's an option. Otherwise, you can call us at the call center. We have a call center that works 24 hours per day for 5 days per week, Monday to Friday. So this is a group of pension experts answering any phone call that is coming in, usually within a minute or less, and they will be able to address your question. So the number provided here is if you call us from New York or the United States, there's a number also in Switzerland, and you have a range of toll-free numbers to reach our call center so that you don't have to pay. So this information is all provided here on the Contact Us page. And now, before we close the session, a quick overview of member self-service. Member self-service is easy to reach. Here, you click on Member Self-Service Login, and it will take you to the login page. If you haven't yet registered for Member Self-Service, please go to Resources and to the tab about Member Self-Service, where you will find detailed information about how to complete the registration. It's fairly intuitive, but if you have any questions or need support, there are details on who to contact if you need support. We provide member self-service, tech support, or support in general within 1 day from you reaching out. And again, if you need to contact us, do it via the official channels I just showed you, which are the only ones where we can guarantee that your query is duly tracked and responded to within a timely manner. Now, let's say you have already logged in. You have already set up your member self-service account. It will take you to your login page. If you haven't yet registered, you click here at the bottom to register. But if you have registered in the past, you simply click on login. If you can't remember your username or password, use the reset functions forgot here at the bottom. I will log into my member self-service. You accept the disclaimer. You are in member self-service. Here are the tabs visible to you as a participant, including the estimate tool, third before last, including the document tab where you can access important communications from the fund, including your pension statement, and including the e-forms where you can access all official pension fund forms, including payment instruction forms, PENS E6 or PENS E7, or the residual settlement designation A2. All of these forms were mentioned today. Proof document is where you can track receipt by the fund of separation documents for your case, as I demonstrated a little bit earlier. Personal information is where you see, of course, your personal information. And then document upload, second before last, is where you can upload documents to the fund if that option is available to you. There are a few agencies where that is not available because you have an SPC that would support you with document submission tasks. I will not go to disbursement right now, or I can quickly show you, but there's nothing in my disbursement because I haven't received any payments from the fund. Once you are in receipt of a payment, whether a lump sum or a regular monthly payment or a retroactive payment, it will show here as in which currency it was paid, what amount was paid to you, gross, meaning before deduction for after-service health insurance, if applicable in your case, and then the net, which is the amount after service health insurance deduction, if applicable in your case. Otherwise, there would be no deductions besides after service health insurance. Now, documents. This is where you can access all your estimates, and I have so many estimates, not because I am desperate to separate, but because I demonstrate often how to use the estimate tool. But it's an excellent tool, and these estimates are key for benefit decision. Here is also the pension statement, the one that Dilba showed you, with a summary of your status with the fund since you joined till the most recent prior year end, which at this time is 2023. The statement for 2024, meaning your contributory service and participation in the fund since you joined till year end 2024, will be published in May this year. So it will be published very soon. E-forms, I already mentioned, here are all the forms, including the A2 designation of beneficiary for a residual settlement form in English or French, and the forms PENS E6 and PENS E7. Here, E6 in English, E7 in English, and of course in French, as well as other documents. Proof documents, there's nothing because I haven't separated, but that would be where you would see the documents submitted by you and your organization. If you had separated and we had received any, personal information obviously is that. Estimate is where you would run your estimates, as I explained earlier. And document upload is where you can upload documents to the fund, so you don't need to send them in their hard copy original format. Remember, any official form or signature document must first be signed by you by hand before you make a scanned version of that document and upload it to the fund, because we do not accept electronic signatures. Finally, under MSS document upload, once you have uploaded a document, you can always check in the outbox here whether it shows as uploaded to the fund. You see here, I have a number of documents that I have uploaded that I could access if I wanted to by clicking here, and it would show me the document. So here, if you did upload documents to the fund, you can access them later here in the future if you wish. And that is all for member self-service. So I will stop here with the pension tool demo and basically take you to the end in the sense that we are closing the session. We have reached the end of our presentation today. In terms of contact details, again, please use the official contact details that we provided here on our website, as I demonstrated a couple of minutes ago. And if you are staff member of an agency, in that case, you have a staff pension committee secretary, an SPC secretary, who is your pension expert in your organization and whom you should contact, or that office you should contact via the contact details provided on your intranet for all pension questions other than member self-service tech support. With this, big thanks to my colleagues who responded to 155 of your questions. I don't see any open questions outstanding. And big thanks also to our colleagues in OICT who facilitated the organization of this session today and the technical support. And most importantly, thank you for attending, for your attention for a long period today. I hope this session was useful. I believe we probably posted a link to a survey in the chat. Thank you for please completing it so that we know whether the session was useful, was clear, provided you the information you need, and helps you with the process to prepare for separation. If you are separating in the near future, I wish you all the best. I hope it is a separation that you wanted. But in any case, if you have any questions from the fund, use the contact channels that are available so that we can help you in this process for separation or after separation and in the future, and help address your pension questions as you need it. I wish you all the very best. And again, thank you for being here today. Goodbye.